Okay, welcome everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit because very soon we're going to be doing a Kickstarter. And I thought it'd be a good time to discuss my history as a developer. So, what is this Kickstarter for? Well, the title of the video will give a for a game called Petmon. Petmon is a Digimon inspired diceless table RPG borrowing mechanics from games such as Chubo's Marvelous Wish Granting Engine by Jenna Moran, who was very nice, spoke on Discord a few years ago about the game, actually asking for permission to use her engine as a basis before we went into design, playtesting, and you get the idea, get all that worked out, right? Well, before we get into that, I thought it'd be a good time to talk a little bit about who I am. So, as you know, I don't really post on the channel a lot. This channel is really for saving music videos and ASMR videos. But I do occasionally post videos, and I have some models. This is in VR chat. I make models a little bit there. I don't have my tracking on, so my arms aren't going to move too realistically. But I am big into tabletop games and have been since 2011. So in 2011, I started, well, I won't say what year, so you can't figure out my age, but I was in college. And in 2011, one of my roommates asked if I could be in their game, playtest game of what was called Legend D20 by Rule of Cool. Now, that name is going to mean nothing to most people here. I don't think anyone here has heard of that game, except maybe one guy, but I don't really like talking about that guy anymore. So it was a kind of D&D style sort of tabletop game. You see, during that period of time, it was right after 4th edition was kind of on its way out, and a lot of people were still in 3rd edition because Pathfinder was a big thing, 1st edition Pathfinder. And so people were trying to see if they could be the next 3rd edition. So there were a bunch of games sort of just spiraling around that time: Fantasy Craft, Myth Weavers, Pathfinder, and Legends D20 was one of them. It was really pushed heavily by Giants in the Playground, which was a webcomic with a very active, still very active forum for homebrew of D&D. They've just moved on to 5e D&D. They didn't really like 4e that much. I'm a 4e defender, but I'm not going to derail things with that. So that playtest, that's how I actually made a pretty close friend in well, I shouldn't dox them, so let's just call them Lady Mappy, because that's the name they have on YouTube, that we haven't hung out in a while. And they got me really, really into design. You see, even early on, when I was playing these tabletop games, I started to experiment with the idea of making my own. And that's not too weird if you know the history of the hobby. If you've ever read Designers and Dragons, published by Evil Hat, you will know that new games started coming out within about, I would say, 1 year until Tunnels and Trolls came out. Because one of the first thoughts people had when D&D came out was, how do I make my own D&D? And it's not that strange to think about, because D&D is very specific. And so it's not too surprising people would want to make their own thing. And Legends D20 was pretty specific, and so I was already experimenting with little ideas. Most of these games have not survived. I remember one of the first ones was My Little Pony game with dice as attributes. That didn't survive. I remember there was one based on Metroid Prime. They tried to be about acquiring equipment being more important. That didn't really survive. Those have been lost in my old computer. I don't even want to think about them. I made some prestige classes I prefer 3rd edition that my friend, the Lady Matt, pushed me into making, but in their own words, they were terrible. And they're probably still on Giants in the Playground, but they're gone. Really, my creation career started with Dungeon World. That is a somewhat disgraced now game due to Adam Koebel. This whole incident I don't want to get into and distract from this discussion, but at the time I released the monk for it, and still it looks like I'm the only one who did a monk class for it, which either means no one cares or it was good enough no one thought doing their own spin. I don't know, but I released that. It's still available on Drive-Thru RPG, and that was like my first time releasing a published product. And anyone who bought that knows that because of how many times I shout out updates because I was so nervous about doing it wrong. Like if you bought that, you know what I. And sorry about that to those who bought that because I blew up your email. But that was my first time really selling a product. And then I started working from there. Save the date, which I don't think is still up there. Eddie Mappy did the layout for that. And that was like a little, well, I don't think it was 2011, 2012-ish. So this was kind of not newish. I mean, after all the extraordinary adventure the Baron Mundschiff had existed, but it was kind of like something you see nowadays on itch.io, which I don't even think was a thing back in 2011, 2012. But it was a small little game about romantic comedies. Then Dungeon Bastards, which I made in a night, well, absolutely plastered. I used to be an alcoholic. Very seriously. I got off of alcohol, but I used to be a serious alcoholic. I was plastered when I wrote that game. It was based off of Rat Queens. And it used, the guy who made, well, I guess now he's known for Blades in the Dark, but Aegon. And he had worked, he was very close with Vincent Baker, and he was working with Vincent Baker early on in Powered by the Apocalypse. So was the creator of Monster Hearts. And Fred Hicks, that's his name, Fred Hicks, he had this engine that never really used it again, and then it was turned into an Exalted hack called Radiant. I used that as a basis for Dungeon Bastards, and it was inspired by the comic Rat Queens, which I don't think anyone really remembers it. I think the creator got outed for like spousal abuse, so I don't think anyone talks about that comic anymore, but it was like a D&D inspired comic back then, and this was before the 2015 D&D revival, so it was mostly referencing like 3rd edition stuff. And don't quote me on the creator being outed for that. I don't know. I forgot about that till this recording. I didn't look it up. Maybe I'll put text on there about it. And it was inspired by that comic, though, which was about these adventurers. So Dungeon Bastards was based on that. It's like, what if there was a D&D party, but everyone was a drunken asshole? And that also borrowed a little bit from Maid, actually. That was like the Japanese game by Ryo Kamina. A little bit in there too, because I used 66 tables, which do not originate from Maid, but it's my first time actually ever seeing those. They're actually pretty common in Japan. And let's see, after that, I feel like after that, after that I did some 13th Age homebrew, third-party products. So I released the Improved Monk and the Improved Fighter, which I think did pretty well. I think people liked those. They're for free, though. And a few others, custom stuff, some of which got into a fanzine, I believe, called Icons. But for the most part, that was really it. And then I don't think I forgot about that. I did make Chanbara, but I don't really stand by that game anymore. It's a little Orientalist. It was because I got really into Kurosawa films for a while. And, which considering the history of Legend of the Five Rings, I think is how most of those older games got made. That came out. What else did I work on back then? I think I delisted these because they were so garbage. But there was a game by Robin Laws, which isn't garbage, which I think was called Hillside. I can't remember. Or Hillfolk. And I made some settings for it, but I ended up thinking that they were just so specific. One, it's been based off this idea I've had forever for a game where you're trapped inside of like a dangerous situation, but you're safe, but you have to venture out into that dangerous thing, which is a very basic idea, but it's always been like an alien invasion of xenomorphs, but you're stuck inside the base, and the xenos are out there, and you're trying to survive with dwindling resources. I feel like a ton of games have been made with that idea, though, since then. It was a setting for that, and then the other one was like based off of, I think Meiji era, like right as after Commodore Perry in Japan, but I recognize that one, I probably got so many things wrong with that. Oh, I did sell one of my 13th Age homebrews around that time, the Samurai class. I'm sure that one could be better in hindsight. And then I think I went quiet for a bit because that's when I went to work at KPMG and I got so busy as an accountant that working insane hours. Have you ever, I don't like using that ableist language, working wild nap hours. You ever work in public accounting, especially like a Big Four? Do you want to know what the hours are like? All right, I'll tell you right now. Okay. Imagine you come in at 7 a.m. and you don't get a lunch break. and you work until 4 in the morning, and you live on Long Island. So you then have to commute back to Long Island because they don't let you sleep at the office anymore, only to come back afterwards and you have to consider the time in your train. But so you didn't really get any sleep. Yeah, I didn't last more than a year there. And I was so busy. Oh my God. Do not go into public accounting. Do not. They lie their teeth about everything. 75,000 a year for that kind of job. Bullshit. Never work that industry. I work private accounting now, never do public. Even when I went to smaller places, it was still shit. Oh my God. Busy season was still like you don't get weekends off. You work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, 3 months, and sometimes it'd be a second busy season if they did a lot of business stuff. And they wonder why they can't find workers and AI isn't helping. I wonder why. I wonder why. Maybe it's because you burn people out. Anyway, fuck that industry. So during that time, I didn't really work too much, but I had worked on some basic things in the background when I had time. And that led to my first major release with a publisher. You see, what I did there was I was on something awful forms a lot back then. And be careful here, Zoomers. When I call myself a goon, that's what we called ourselves in something awful back then. It had nothing to do with gooning. That term didn't exist yet. It was just something awful. People called themselves, and I think it was because someone had complained about us once, called us a bunch of goons, which was another way of saying a thug or a mook, and so it just stuck. And basically, that's what I did a lot and was I hung around there, and I remember there was a thread there criticizing some PBTA games powered by the Apocalypse, Vincent Baker's Apocalypse World engine, and it argued like a type of incremental design that I decided to try. I don't know if I'd recommend that. It took forever, and had 11 drafts and took like 2 years of playtesting. I mean, we're going to get to that when we talk about Pepmon, but games that are like this take so long to playtest and create. We'll get to that in a second, because it's funny when we get to Pepmon. And so, where was I? So I made Friendship Effort Victory. That was based specifically on, because it was also about a big thing then was about having tight focus. So the game is very tight. I'm going to avoid a dirty joke I just thought of, especially we're in this avatar. I'm going to avoid that dirty joke I just thought of. So, because YouTube is puritanical nowadays. So it was about very tight design though back then. So it's specifically about One Piece, Naruto, and 2000 era shonen stuff. I know what you're gonna say about One Piece. I know it's actually from the late 90s. You win. You win the no prize. But that era of shonen, My Hero Academia actually falls into it a little bit, despite being later on. It's about a style, fight train, and some of those tropes that were pretty common back then. And it went for that specifically. For example, it really can't do Dragon Ball because Dragon Ball is so Goku focused that it wouldn't really work. This is about everyone having something to do. And yes, I know, Luffy, Ichigo, Naruto. There's always that in shonen, but like I tried as one developer, our best to make it so it worked for an ensemble. And I still feel pretty proud about Friendship Effort Victory and everything we achieved there. Actually, art work by Lib, they did an amazing job. Falco did great layout, editing, everything. Yes, the final product. Yes, I am proud about all that together. But I really say design-wise, yes, I'm also proud of the work I did there. Though I feel like I could do so much better now. And after that major release, I had been working at a few titles. Something fell through due to a company called Fandom, and I don't want to go into that. So a lot of my projects fell apart there for a bit. And so as a result of that, I had to reorient. So I had this game that was going to be made for a magazine. Oh, right, I forgot to mention. The reason I got a publisher is I volunteered to their magazine, the San Gennaro Anthology, which is now for Far Horizons due to complicated things I want to get into. Business stuff, And I had produced for them, before Friendship Effort Victory, I had produced Crying Fantasy Friends, The name is from Crying Breakfast Friends, if you know. A lot of my shit is direct references because I'm a hack. Um, and it was basically, once again, borrowing actually from Jenna Moran's Chubo's Marvelous Wish Granting Engine, which is the best game you've never played. But doing it for kind of like the Tone of Steven universe, but for retired adventurers. That was the idea behind that game. And it did well, and I worked well with the team. So they published Friendship, Effort, Victory. Actually, if you want to take this as a bit of advice for your own development career, self-publish for a few years, figure out how it works, do small-scale projects, don't start with your big piece. So you learn how to finish a project, you learn how to sell a product, and then work your way in through the entryways a lot of these publishers have. Make friends, and then they'll publish your book. I'm not saying this sociopathically, I'm just saying it's kind of how you do things in the industry. Or I guess you can release for 5th edition, because then you can get like $500,000 on a Kickstarter, I guess. Sorry, that's a little bitter. I shouldn't say that. Maybe I'll cut that joke. But, where was I? So anyway, back to Friendship, Effort, Victory, and the fandom thing and everything falling out for a bit. I had this unreleased thing. I also made Shaping Stars with. I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot about that game. That was the Mass Effect Avatar: The Last Airbender game I put on their magazine. I could have done better with that one. But another good experience. I could have done better with that one, though. I could have done so much better with that one. Yeah, that one was half-baked. I think that one could have been better. Anyway, I had another submission I never released, though. And not just Pretty Card Hunters, which I just remembered because I was really into Pretty Cure for a while. That game never got finished. That was a card-based game. I don't think that's ever getting finished. It was slightly inspired by the game Monkey, if you know what Monkey is. That's about Sun Wukong. I didn't make that one. I don't remember who did. But what I did then is I had this unproduced game called We Dig Giant Robots based off of Megas XLR. And I decided, because all the other things fell through and my projects were going to take a little longer to get published, we decided to make that a full published title. And they were down with it. And, it went really well, I'll be honest. Like, I was actually really iffy about advancing that to a full published title because I didn't think there was enough meat on that bone. It was a mix between one of my favorite anime games in the world, believe it or not, is Mike Pondsmith's Teenagers from Outer Space, which is inspired by Urusei Yatsura by Rumiko Takahashi, a show I've never actually seen, but I'm a big fan of Rumiko Takahashi's Inuyasha and Rumiko Takahashi's Ranma, which are both successors to Urusei Yatsura. And why am I saying it that way? What is it? Anyway, so it's inspired by that, and it's mixed a little bit of Real Kamina's Maid. And, and it's got original mechanics. I mean, there's Fate in there, too. I love Fate aspects. I throw them in all my games. And I think by saying that, I just lost like 50 people. And I love them. I'm sorry. And we advanced that to a full title. We did a Kickstarter, and that went really well. Honestly, that went really well. And there are things I don't know if I should say. Like, all I'm going to say is I did not expect certain people to back the project, and sent emails saying to certain of the higher level backers and things, and saying, "Oh, I don't know who this person is." Realize, wait a minute, your friend by their name, looking at your signature. Oh my God, that's all I'm going to say. Head back the project. I was like, oh my God, I didn't think they'd back it. That's all I'm going to say. And that's actually how I met the people at Spellbook Gaming, and I've been on a few of their podcast episodes. Great people. And really, I'll play their game Bite the Hand, their Mothership Cyberpunk game. I was in the episode for that. Great. Actually, every episode was great. And like the Wine Dark Sea, Galactic 2E, play those games. They're great. And the people behind them are great. And, so We Dig Giant Robots comes out. Now, I have a few projects in the pipeline, some of which, if you are on my self-published stuff, you know. Like I didn't mention this, but I work with Vel Mini, creator of Panic in the Dojo and Fellowship. They're also a goon from SA. The Zoomers remember what I meant by gooner. Goon, not gooner, goddammit. You know what I meant. That also a former essay, so I know them from there. And oh my god! And years ago, they made this called Titan World. Back, it's based on Attack on Titans, and I love that game. And I said, you want me to make a generic version of it because otherwise this is lost to time. And I did. That became Hunt for the Elder Gods. That was self-published on the cheap. Pretty proud of that one. Fun fact: while we were making it, it turned out that Titan World has its own fan community on Reddit that's done like other editions. She was like flabbergasted. She had no idea people cared about this game. She was confused I cared about this game. And then what was it? Then I also produced The Lost World. We're going to be doing a full production of that soon. I'll probably do a video about that. That is a game inspired by a certain movie, but officially it's inspired by the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle public domain thing. That's all I'm going to say. And that's a fun one. I'm having a friend do a cover for that. She sent me. That is, I can't use her real name, but she usually goes under the Voyak. She's doing a great job on the cover. I gotta ask, actually, the commission's almost due, and that's going to be a game coming out soon, but it's publicly available in its playtest form in ashcan form on the Creative Commons. I'll get to that in a second. And also released the SRDs for Magnificent Heroic Role-Playing and Majestic Super Heroic Role-Playing, which will be which means they're both on Creative Commons as well, which means anyone could finish the game if I die. That's part of the reason they're releasing these things in Creative Commons. And those are superhero games. One's a retro clone, and one is my way of advancing the retro clone into the modern day, if that makes sense. So, like, one is just preserve the game that's been out of print since 2012, and then the other is, what if I made this game today? How would I change it? You know what I mean? And the games are actually done. It's mostly about the setting that I've been working on. Though I do want to maybe change one thing with the dice ladder. I did an experimental thing, and people hated it. Like, all right, so those are available. And also, if you want Wild Hunt, which is going to be the big title I work on after Petmon is over, that game is available somewhere in a playtest form. And that's like my Ruby meets Dark Souls game, with a little bit of Bleach thrown in there. Rooster Teeth's Ruby. And yeah, I know, right? I like that series. And yeah, so all that's like my history of development work. And a lot of it's available. And now we get to Petmon. Now, Petmon started in 2017, actually. I know, it's 2026. That's what I'm saying. These games take forever to make. If you really care, they take a long time. Or if you have ADHD, like I do. Or if you have a full-time job and a long-term committed relationship. Still, you know, it's not my full-time job. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, where was I? But it started in 2017, and it originally started and got abandoned because I was looking at Chubos and I thought, wow, you could really do Digimon with this. And I started a little fan hack of Digimon, and then it died. And I put it to the side. And like 3 years later, I found it, and I called Jenna Moran on Discord, which sounds like I know Jenna Moran. I don't. It's just I asked Rand Burton, who was a former goon who worked closely with Jenna Moran and got me in contact with Jenna Moran. And actually, I think he's still a goon. Actually, I don't know Rand Burton's gender and pronouns. Okay, I should be more careful with that. But anyway, Rand Burton got me in contact with Jenna, and Jenna was fine with it. So I started real production, and that was about two play tests, one IGM that no one liked. To be fair, it was an earlier version. And the second one was GM'd by Amber, and who was a player in the first one. And that one was great. Super loved that. And we really advanced. Like, it's nothing like how it started. We originally had an XP system. I'm really proud of a lot of what we did with Petmon. Actually, oh my god, where do I even start? So, it's diceless. I've already said that, right? And it's not obviously Petmon. The name's Petmon. So the Digimon stuff, it's inspiration. But you'll see actually when you play the game, the default is nothing like Digimon. And the reason why is it was inspired by Digimon. But while we were doing the Digimon stuff, it dawned on me, like, you look at all the different shows, no similarities in any of their rules. So actually, the default rule set plays like none of them at all. It plays more like just generic. This is a monster pet, and it grows and it gets bigger, etc., etc. And then there's a bunch of things called rules hacks and game mods at the back, and that kind of like, without saying, turns it into certain. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And there's certain preset combos for certain things. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Gotta be careful what I'm saying. You know what I mean? You know. I might have to cut some of this, and the way it's done is you basically have skills, which by default are freeform, but in the game hacks there are approaches there, which are from Fate. They're from Fate Accelerated because that's on a Creative Commons, so I include a shout out to their SRD. Forceful, quick, etc. Also, there's multiple skill lists I made depending on the tone of the game you're going for, and all that stuff. And they're all in the rules. Because at first I did like a 13-page style for skill system, and then some players would prefer more. It depends on the player. Me, aspects are easy, so aspects are in the game, but some of the players really struggle with it. The freeform skills were the same thing, so I included that for people who don't want that, because it doesn't really change the game if you have like a preset system. You have skills, relationships, aspects, all these things work together to create your... there was called intention levels of Chubos, but I think we renamed it to effort. And you then compare it to the effort chart. And there are other factors like if you work together, if you spend will, which, unlike in Chubos, is not individual, it's actually the entire group shares the same will pool to promote teamwork. You compare it against the effort chart to determine your ultimate outcome. So, of course, you have these static stats, which means you already know how you're going to succeed. But then you have points, and these points are obtained through the will economy, which, if you're familiar with Fate, you already know how it mostly works. You allow bad things to happen to you, you get more will to use later, which is a good way of encouraging players to let bad things happen to them. And also, by design, if you don't work with your pet and you don't work with other people, you're unlikely, without spending will, going to get more than a +3, which is not enough for a full success. It's a partial success. And that's actually by design to say that if you try to go it alone, you're not going to make it, because that is not the core of a monster taming show. Friends are your power, quoting Kingdom Hearts there, but still, you get the point. You have to play into your relationships. After all, you don't have character classes. You have virtues. The virtues are courage, friendship, courage, friendship, love, sincerity, knowledge, hope, reliability. God, if I missed one, I'm going to be raked over the coals for that, but there's no way to put a document in front of this while I'm doing this. And you might be saying, where's light? Light is actually handled because all your powers are coming from the power of light, and there is miracle perks, and there's a special destiny virtue for one-shot movie games. Yeah, see what I did? It only comes up in the movie. And there isn't kindness, but there is a redemption. That's all I'm going to say. And I'm not saying where those come from. I'm just saying that's you get those virtues. And these things relate to who, not saying where I got them from. No. These are, So these ideas, these concepts, they're your virtues, and they're all about teamwork, about being with your petmon, about growing as a character. After all, they give you your foci, because I used a version of milestone leveling that is a little cool, and the way it works is based around this. It came from me rewatching Digimon 2020, and when I was watching Digimon 2020, I realized that the way these shows work is they kind of rotate the focus every few episodes, so you have a moment to shine on people, and then you have a big boss thing at the end after they all have their time to shine. And the amount of times they each have to get a time to shine kind of goes up throughout the series, and that's how the focus episodes work. Essentially, all of your virtues give you foci, which are ways of challenging virtue. And the GM uses them to come up with a story seed. Every person needs a certain number of focus episodes, which just means your foci is the focus of the episode and you are given more importance. The concept will focus on you. Not that other people aren't there, it's just your focus. The story is focusing on you for this episode. You complete enough of them on your last focus episode to reach your next stage, you get a wish. And the power of a wish allows you to break the rules within reason. There are limits on a wish. And after the wish is done, your Petmon evolves to the next stage. Let me give you an example of how these wishes work. So, to explain this story, though, from the playtest, I need to explain that there is the power of darkness. At any time, you may call on the power of darkness to increase your effort by 1 for every point you take. You can just automatically increase your effort 1 to 1 by 1 through the power of darkness. And when you do, what you accomplish will potentially cause you to fall to darkness. You also have your vice. Your vice is the opposite of your virtue. And when you use your vice, it gives you a specific power. Like, I think courage is the power of the vice of cowardice, which allows you to escape a bad situation. All of these add to your darkness. And if you get too much darkness, one of two things can happen. You normally cannot die in the game. Damage is actually really complicated in Petmon, so you normally can't die in the game. But if you fall to darkness, you have essentially died. And before then, though, you will have a darkness burst, which is like a dark evolution. And that's what happened in the playtest. My Petmon, Clank, they had a darkness burst because I wanted them to become a better machine Petmon. And I forcibly installed what I thought was the ultimate machine Petmon into them, and they evolved into a dark version. They destroyed a village. It was terrible, and it made my character go like all Jerry from season 3, if you know what I'm talking about. So a lion Petmon was threatening Clank, and what I had to do was I used my wish to wish for a moment to talk with them because I was afraid of letting Clank get into a fight. And during that moment of contemplation and talking and working things out, we agreed and reached a mutual understanding, and Clank finally evolved into their proper next stage. And that was really cool. And that's one way you can use a wish. I remember other ways people used wishes. One of them used their wish because they were the Petmon had built this artificial fortress that wasn't really alive and was somewhat lobotomized, and the one with the Hope Arc believed they were a real person and freed them, even though I was saying doing that would kill them. It's their wish to save them, and that gave into the power of hope. Their Petmon evolved. It was a very nice scene. You get the idea. And that's how the focus episodes works. The conflict focuses on the character until they get their wish, they use their wish, etc. They always have darkness. And that's really how they die, because the health system's really weird in the game, because it's right from Chubos, and it's one of my favorite health systems ever. You have health levels and wounds. The way this works is pretty simple. You get a certain number of health levels. They can hold a wound. When you take a wound, you have to buy off the wound one of 6 ways to keep your narrative control. And these are amazing things. They're things like twisting the wound. One of the examples I gave is like a vampire Petmon tries to mind control you, and it works, except you're now terrible servants and everything you're doing is undermining their plan. Or you can take a wound metaphorically, like it warns you if you take this idol, you'll be trapped here forever. So you take it and you're fine, but then two version of you and the Petmon appear in a cage, and if you shake that, it affects you if the doll is affected. I don't want to use the term for that because it's a little, but you know what I mean. It's that concept, and it's stuff like that. I love that. Another example of medical for a wound is that someone threatens to send you into a hell world, and so you buy it off metaphorically. And it's not that you go to hell, but your perspective on life changes, where everything you see is bad. If you open up your phone, you doom scroll. If you hear news, it's always bad news. It makes hell on earth because your perspective changes to only see bad things. Stuff like that. And there's like 7 different versions of that for different concepts, like living with the wound, turn a deadly disease into a bad cold, or what was another example? You get the idea. It's a great system. And when you get one, you also get a aspect that you can use for future. So it actually makes you better to have these wounds. But of course, you can be taken out of a scene if you get a wound and you don't have anything to write it off, and they recharge at different levels based on if they're normal, tough, or dead, which you get when you're taken out of a scene. And those are only healed to reach the next stage because they're long-lasting trauma. And you get the idea. It's damage that is so narrow, drives the story forward and allows you to control the narrative. I love it. Oh my god, I love it. I could talk all day about Petlon. I really could. We spent so long working on it, and me and the playtesters, we're just finishing up the art now. I already got the Kickstarter page written up. I'm probably going to do a video for it separate from this. And then we're going to launch, we're hoping for April. Fingers crossed, you know what I mean? And, you know, we're going to, I haven't worked out like the goal yet. We're going to work this out. The thing that you might know from my We Dig Giant Robots thing is I generally want the game done. The game is done. You will get a game. What we haven't done yet is finish all the art and the layout. Unlike We Dig Giant Robots, we have not done that yet. Because I do not want to fail you, and I do not want to fail my workers. Well, workers is a funny word. It's not really my workers. We're working with Far Horizon, which is a co-op. Why do I say we? This part is just me. I'm working with Far Horizon, which is a publisher and a workers cooperative, which means the way this works is that everybody, based on the labor and the job, agree to a contract that in perpetuity gives them an allocation of profits forever from the sale of this product. What that means is at no point will I ever benefit from the excess of their labor. I got my shares that we all agreed was fair for leading the project and writing the book. The artists will get their shares, the layout people get their shares, editors get their shares, the proofreaders get their shares. And then every time a copy is sold, it is split amongst us. Meaning that in perpetuity, for the rest of this product, we will be splitting. And that means Kickstarter needs, you know, we need to make sure it goes well, or else I fail them a little bit. And the way we're going to handle that is, of course, you know, we're doing the Kickstarter. Normally, you know, the game is done. So if this doesn't go well, we'll take the art that's already done, we'll give it to the layout guy, they'll finish the layout, and we release what we got. The cover and a few example monsters, call it a day. It is what it is. If we get the Kickstarter and it's successful, we do all the art, we make it look nicer, and it's a nicer book. But if you back the Kickstarter, you're getting a game. As a matter of fact, while I cannot guarantee it immediately, that was a mistake. We Dig Giant Robots, I didn't consider logistics of like collecting money, and nowadays you can do pay later, which is probably going to I think we're disabling it for the campaign, but that could have further complicated. I know that happened to Fabulia Ultima. So, you know, we have to work out the logistics, but you will I will have things given out to you early so you can play the game immediately. And then from there, it is just a matter of finishing art and finishing layout. And then we knock that out. You know, I do not want a failed Kickstarter on record, because I do not want to be one of those people. You know what I'm saying? No offense, but, you know, one of my earliest Kickstarters, someone ran out of the money, and I don't want to be that person. You know what I mean? And that's why I made sure the game was 100% for We Dig Giant Robots. That's why I've always self-published before. It's why I was so nervous about Kickstarting We Dig Giant Robots, but it went well. Ignoring the ulcer that I got, not actually, I already had one because I have acid reflux, but from the worries of that, seeing the ticker go up. We didn't get funded until the last few days. I was so worried. So anyway, you will get the product. And furthermore, we are going to be doing everything will be released on the Creative Commons. It refers specifically to the writing and the game mechanics. As you might have noticed from me mentioning PBTA and Fate, I've benefited very heavily over the years from creators who put things out on open licenses for other creators to work on. And in my opinion, I want to give back to the community in that sense. And I've already released Magnificent Heroic Role Playing, Lost World on Creative Commons, even though those games aren't out yet, for similar reasons. I feel like if I make something, I want other people to work on it. That even includes the setting. Mind you, Petmon doesn't have a setting yet, but on other projects, I'm planning to do the same, which is not normally the case in this industry. Magnificent Heroic Roleplaying, for example, puts the setting into the Creative Commons. And Petmon will put all the mechanics into it using what I'm being called the Pet Engine, so that anyone who is interested in making their own game anyway, any supplements, anything, who just wants to borrow text because they think my explanation of a particular mechanic is good and easy for them just to take without having to rewrite it themselves. I want it to be easy. Now, technically speaking, under the US law, game mechanics are not subject to copyright as they refer to a process. However, the writing itself is, which is sort of a strange thing, but in other words, the rules, the mechanics, the processes cannot be copyrighted. However, if you were to just copy and paste text out that is not under a license, that would be copying the text, and that itself could be an issue. You have to rewrite it, essentially. I want to remove that barrier. Just, it's right here. It's for whatever you want to do with it. Want to make a podcast, want to make your own game, whatever. I feel like that's giving back to the community, and I have complicated feelings on copyright because, in my opinion, and I feel like all the scandals with AI have kind of shown that copyright really only protects people with money. It doesn't protect the average small artist because you cannot enforce your copyright law. So if a rich person wants your thing, there's not much you can actually do because you can't afford to sue them. I don't want to get too political, but it ties into my specific views on copyright law and how it really works. So I don't even want to bother with it. In my opinion, the small artists can have it because it's not like it can stop the big guys anyway. And so that will all also be there. So the text of the game will be open for anyone to do with as they please, and the Kickstarter will be about producing a nice release of the main book. And if it doesn't get Kickstarted, we'll still release with what we already have. It'll just be a smaller release. But I would appreciate if people chose to support the project and our team. So I want to thank everyone for coming here. Like I said, I want to give a history of me as a developer, where I came from, and what have you, because I feel like in this industry, we don't really have a lot of press outlets. There's Rascal News and blogs, and occasionally YouTubers, and YouTubers are difficult to reach out to. I guess what I'm saying here with all that is, I want to give back to the community, support the project if you're interested. It'll help them make a bigger project, finally, but you will get a product, a game, a piece of art. Just don't say content. I hate the word content. No matter what, because it's ready, it's done, it's been play tested, it's been edited, proofed. The only thing it hasn't had is it isn't had all the art pieces I'd be interested in getting, and we're going to base how many art pieces we get based on how the Kickstarter goes. Obviously we get above, maybe I'll commission some more, and they also get all that stuff with shares and the layout, and that stuff that I know that Falco can do the layout, and I know these artists. I don't know if they want me to name them, so I'll say I know these artists can get the art done. I've seen their work, they're great. Just a matter, and the game's done, so the thing that's really what you play is done. So, it's like that. So, like I said, we're shooting for an April release. And for anyone who stuck around the full hour, because I think we clocked in an hour, that's how long I want the video to be, then I hope you enjoyed the video. I might make more of these in the future. Be golden, and I don't have a sign